All right, guys, I'm on the clock in the quarantine startup led by Leone. It's pick 309. Anthony Schwartz, Tutu Atwell, Kenneth Gainwell, Brevin Jordan, Ramondre Stevenson. Who am I taking?
Ramondre Stevenson for me.
Gretch?
Yeah, that's interesting at 309. I'm in the auction one, and Pat had already taken Stevenson, which I think I agree with him. That's who I would take. But I took Gainwell at 307 because Stevenson was gone.
Okay.
But I like Stevenson, yeah.
Was Gainwell the prospect that everyone preferred? Like they preferred him over Ramondre, but then Ramondre just has a better path to opportunity?
I think a clearer path for sure.
Right.
And Ramondre was a pretty good prospect in his own right. He was second in elusive rating over his career in the class, second in yards per route run over his career in the class. So pretty strong, but he was just a committee back, JUCO transfer. He'll probably be a committee back in the pros, but it's the Patriots. So, those cheap committee backs have often been pretty valuable.
All right. The pick is in. Thank you, guys. I guess I can do a proper introduction. This is Ship Chasing. I'm here with Ben Gretch, Pat Carrain, the new green screen. No more Murphy appearances.
We can bring Murphy in still. He's not banned, but we don't have to have him coming around whenever he feels like.
There you go. We'll have to think through this because it is the exact same color as the background. Your head can almost look like it's just floating.
I know it does kind of have that effect. There's one, we have like a Ship Chasing alt thing that I was testing out that's black and white.
Yeah. Doesn't look as good.
Didn't quite look as good, but maybe I'll try that next week.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out. Gretch, how are you doing? We missed you last week.
I'm good. I'm trying to figure out on my notifications where I can retweet the show, but Belair, it looks like, tagged you two and not me, which
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty upset about that, Belair.
Maybe, but yeah, I don't know if Belair had confirmation.
well, Belair just posted this, so don't feel too picked on, Ben.
There you go. Yeah, Belair, your mission right now is to tag, do a screenshot of Ben Gretch, and give him his dedicated own promo tweet. Say Ben Gretch is live doing an hour monologue about the fourth round of rookie draft right now.
I missed you guys last week though, but it was a good show. I enjoyed watching. If anyone missed it that's listening tonight, I would say go back and watch it. That was a really good one. But I got some golf in last week, which was nice.
Nice.
Wow.
That's nice.
It is almost golf season, and it's rookie draft season. I mean, we were kind of breaking it down with Sean. Not a lot of drafts had started last week. Now we have at least a few rounds under our belt. Some of mine are already finished. Are you guys feeling like you have kind of a good grip now on the rookie draft landscape?
I am. It's funny because you kind of work out some things through rookie drafts. So I kind of was tweaking my rookie ranks as I went. Eventually, finally, after a lot of back and forth, I had Rondale Moore ahead of Terrace Marshall. Then I put Terrace Marshall ahead. And now I have Rondale Moore ahead again. But in the interim, I drafted a shitload of Terrace Marshall and not that much Rondale Moore.
Wow. So that's like the not financial advice thing, do as I say, not as I do, huh?
Yeah. So Rondale Moore's back up ahead, but my portfolio says differently.
Sean or Ben, I assume you're Rondale over Terrace Marshall or no?
I am. My computer's being weird. Am I slow with you guys right now?
You seem fine.
Okay, good. Because I can't click. I can't change tabs. Oh, there I am. Rondale over Marshall for sure. But I'm a little biased. I was telling Pat this. I took Marshall in a pre-draft rookie draft and then was kind of bummed that he slipped a little bit and don't really love the landing spot. And so I was more excited about trying to get Rondale and Elijah and those guys. So I moved Marshall down a little bit. I'm maybe I'm not doing, ranks like Pat for ETR for everyone where I have to, it's more of my own personal ranks where I have to like stand by my takes. It's close, I think, is what I'm getting at. But I think I do. I think I would take Rondale and Elijah higher.
I still like Terrace over Elijah.
Really?
Yeah. But I have Rondale higher.
How much of if you got word that, Jamison Crowder just disappeared off the face of the earth, would Moore shoot up higher in your ranks?
I think he would probably bump up slightly, but I'm not. It's not Crowder that's lowering him in my ranks, really. It's just kind of the strength of the prospect. I mean, he's 178 pounds. Like, I don't know what his ceiling is as a fantasy contributor. I'm not sure it's going to be. I don't know that he'll ever really play on the outside. And it's not necessarily an offense where the slot wide receiver is going to do it for you.
I would say of the dynasty ranks I've looked at, Pat, yours might be the most landing spot agnostic of anyone at this point with wide receivers.
That's kind of how I want to be. I just don't think there's not really been an edge. I would say that historically the edge has been in trying to be mostly landing spot agnostic, because these wide receiver profiles, like, the numbers point us in the right direction. If you follow the numbers, then you'll end up getting to the right spot, partly because the way wide receiver works is they can help change the offense in the first place.
I think, though, like within a tier, you can. Like for me, I was saying Marshall. I think it's close, but I always had Marshall and both Moores, basically in the same grouping, and so
I'm not saying not to look at it at all.
Yeah,
and I would say for Rondale Moore, it's actually, I think it's very important that he landed with the Cardinals, not because of like the traditional landing spot considerations, like passing attempts and stuff, although it's nice, but because we weren't sure how he was going to be utilized as a pro. And now we know he's going to be a full-time slot wide receiver, which is what you wanted. Like I was pretty scared he'd end up with like the Giants or something awful like that. So to have him with a coach that's at least going to use him as a wide receiver, and he's going to have probably an ADOT that's not 2, I think that's good.
Yeah. That was one of the best landing spots of the weekend for sure.
Yeah. One thing I feel like I've been doing in my rookie drafts is just spreading out the decisions, and so in one spot I was taking Bateman. Then yesterday I took Javonte Williams in the mid first, just kind of not being overconfident in any of those things, trying to get some shares, not reaching as much. Whereas last year and in previous years, I was just going all in on a guy in every spot. And then when I got burned, I really got burned.
Yeah, this year is going to be that year for me, because I was talking about this with you guys and Leone. The thing with last year was I preferred Rager to Jefferson, but so did the market. And so I liked Jefferson a lot. I was higher on Jefferson than market, but I was blocking myself a lot by taking Rager first. But I was also trying to get up and get both guys out. I mean, I loved the class, so I was trying to get Judy, I was trying to get Lamb where I could. And I ended up with a good amount of Justin Jefferson because I got him as a consolation prize to Jalen Rager. This year, I like Bateman more than Waddle, and the market disagrees with me. So if I'm wrong on that, it's really going to hurt. And I keep doing it. Like, I've had chances to diversify, and I haven't taken them. Just because I think Bateman is such an incredible prospect that I'm just like willing to kind of, walk into the headwind of the situation. But yeah, if the situation ends up being too much for him, and if he just ends up being not that good, I mean, his profile isn't like spotless. He could end up being like Nelson Aguilar or one of these other, 20-something first-round picks who's just not very good. And given the situation, if that's the case, he's going to be dust. So I am setting myself up for a little bit of pain this year.
Gretch, who's the guy you've been drafting the most?
No, I'm like you. I've been all over the place. And not really intentionally, but it is a weird class where there's some pretty strict tiers. I mean, I think in Superflex, the top 8 is pretty strict, at least in the leagues that I'm in. I know that, there's some people that are, getting out of that in some other leagues. I've seen some stuff, but in most leagues, you're getting the top 4 QBs, Rondale, Pitts, and the top 2 running backs, not necessarily Javonte Williams. Like Etienne I'm seeing going 108 like every time. And then after that, you have another tier that's like Williams, and the next group of receivers are the ones that Pat mentioned, Bateman and Waddle and Devonta Smith. And then we get into the Moores and Terrace Marshall and those guys. And then there's eventually a drop off as well. And I think those tiers are close enough. And I've been lucky enough, I guess, in different positions that I've been diversifying this year. So I haven't had any like hard stances necessarily. I have like one share of a lot of different guys, and then a couple of twos, but not a ton. And even in like to the third round, I don't have guys that I love in this class. I don't know. I mean, it's just not really that class, at least for me. So I've been letting need kind of dictate the interesting flyers I want to get exposure to. Like Gainwell was a team that I completely screwed my running backs in the startup last year. And I've been adding running back depth throughout that draft. And I was like, well, Gainwell was a guy that Pat loved, has a really great profile. There's a lot of concerns with this landing spot, but if Sanders goes down, there's still a crowd there, but I think he can beat out. I mean, particularly, I think one of Boston Scott or Howard probably winds up cut or carry on. There's a lot of names there, but Scott didn't really do it last year in that secondary role. And especially when Sanders got hurt and he got a chance to play, he wasn't very efficient or very good. And so I think the Gainwell pick sort of would give us the indication that they're ready to move towards Gainwell as the secondary running back over Scott. Howard's not good. Carry on, they just claimed, but actually on that roster, I still have Carry on. He's a guy that I think can still play. I was hoping he'd land somewhere more interesting, but if Sanders gets hurt, I think there's room for Gainwell to rise to the top of that. The other side of the equation for Gainwell is if Hurts got hurt, it would be kind of interesting. Or if
that's a good point. Yeah.
There's some concern about Hurts in the dynasty community that I don't think is relaying back to the running backs, but Joe Flacco is their backup. And for as much as we're all talking about how Hurts doesn't throw to his running backs, Flacco throws to his running backs more than, now that Phillip Rivers is retired, maybe more than any quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he's always been great for running back receiving.
Yeah, the other thing is that the franchise doesn't seem fully committed to Hurts, and I don't think they're going to be very good this year. So if they're not, I mean, it could be a Drew Lock situation where, we're all assuming they'll take a quarterback. Obviously, the Broncos didn't, but that's like Hurts has been tough for me in Dynasty because he's got a really high ceiling, but I've been viewing him as kind of like a win now type of superflex piece because of it could go to hell there.
Yeah, if he's not completing passes and they're losing, like if particularly with his arm, the mobile quarterbacks always get hit for that. If he's inaccurate or whatever and they're losing games, I don't think it's out of the question to say that he could get benched. I think he's going to do well. I mean, I am optimistic about Hurts, but that is another path for a guy like Gainwell to gain relevance because if Flacco starts, even if Sanders is there, Gainwell could play alongside that and catch 6 to 8 balls.
Yeah, it's another thing of, Devonta Smith has been, I guess his ADP has kind of settled in, but I feel like he's been still kind of a hot topic and polarizing guy. I think in some other situations, I feel like people would have talked themselves into Devonta Smith more than they are. Do you think people are down on him more because of the landing spot or just because of the other kind of things on his prospect profile?
It's hard for me to say because I've never been super hyped on him. And then I also don't like the landing spot just because I think the Eagles are in a situation where they're not playing one, they're rotating all their wide receivers. So no one's getting consistent reps. So it's like, in some ways I think that's worse for like a rookie dynasty wide receiver in the short term, because now we're like not going to know if they're good because they're not, could hurt their production, hurt their share of the offense where, with a Bateman situation, his production might not be where we want, but he could look awesome. And we're just like, God, I hope that offense opens up. I'd honestly rather have that coming out of year one than a situation like Rager where it's like, we didn't really see him that much. He showed a couple flashes, but now everyone's starting to get antsy. You can't really sell him very easily. So that landing spot concerns me, but trying to be landing spot agnostic, I did not move him up or down as a result of the landing spot. I've always been a little bit wary of his profile. Although I was talking to you guys about how I do think that, if we're going to ding him for staying 4 years in school, we really shouldn't ding him that much for being 166 pounds, because given what he did his junior year, I think if he weighed 186 pounds, he would have come out. And so it's kind of like he stayed in school, but that's got to be a lot due to the fact that he's so small, so skinny. So it's kind of like pick one or the other. Which red flag do you really want to focus on? For me, it's the fact that he's a 4-year player and that the production that we're all excited about came in that 4th year, which has generally been very misleading. So that's the thing that I try to focus on. I'm actually trying to take that weight a little bit out of my mind as I view him for Dynasty and for a redraft.
Yeah. What other have any other things changed for you guys? Like I know I was actually listening to Evan talk about how his 150 changes a lot once he starts drafting and having skin in the game. Did you guys have any kind of rankings or tweaks you ended up wanting to make once you were on the clock and realizing, oh, I actually don't have the full conviction I did pre-draft?
There's stuff like later where you just realize that. I think with all of these ranks, like as you're doing your rookie drafts, like you really have to pay attention to what your roster spots are, what the league format is, what this guy is going to actually add. So just I was getting kind of crazy within my own ranks based on my team situation, taking Elijah Mitchell way ahead of ranks at one point, scooping up some of the wide receivers that I want to wait on for a couple years earlier than I normally would have with a rebuilding type of roster. So that's kind of the big thing that jumped out to me. I think the Rondale one, as I was realizing I didn't have enough exposure to Rondale, it scared me enough to have me move him up my ranks.
And when you see Sean ranking him at like 5th or 6th overall, that starts to give you some pause.
Yeah, that'll make you at least reconsider your position.
I think for me, the biggest thing that because I was as unhappy with the landing spots for guys like Gainwell, Tylan Wallace, who I really liked, and I'm still really concerned about the Baltimore one from draft night. We were talking about it with Bateman. But this class is kind of thin on interesting profiles. I really do think we're stretching with some guys once you get to the 3rd round that got some capital, but man, I don't know that they're going to be good NFL players. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of dudes in that range that just because they got like the 3rd round capital are going to be, good, long-term, consistent players. And so it's interesting. Like the reason I brought up Gainwell is not because like you used to have to pay a early to mid second to get him pre-draft, and I got him 307. Like,
yeah,
there's enough of a discount at that point, and there's enough of a discount on even the guy like Tylan Wallace, where I don't think that's a good situation or won't be for a long time. But if you have the ability to stash him for several years, he was the other guy I was considering, and he went even later than that 307. And he's the guy that I took pre-draft, maybe at 203 or 204 in one of my pre-draft rookie drafts. So, I was really bummed about the landing spot for the team where I already picked him. But now I'm looking at it in this like 3rd round range, and I'm like, this is not a very deep class in terms of good prospect profiles. There are good prospect profiles that are falling well into the 3rd round of rookie drafts in a shallow rookie draft year, even in super, in non-super flex, I guess. And I want to take some stabs on those guys, I guess, and just hope that the whole landing spot thing bears out again. Like I think we're all kind of overreacting to some things, and we see that every year, but especially this year, like if you're taking really fringe prospects just because of capital and you're telling yourself a story, and you're willing to also tell yourself a story that a good prospect can't come out of a situation like the Philadelphia, backfield, and Gainwell can't at some point play, you're doing a lot of reaching when Gainwell's just a pretty good prospect.
Yeah, I still believe in Gainwell, but I kind of want to defend this wide receiver class a little bit. Like, it's a pretty good wide receiver class. I mean, I was like looking back at some of the wide receiver classes before 2020, and some of them are terrible. Like, we don't have this year. We had Jamar Chase, the first wide receiver selected. Often the first wide receiver selected is more of a Henry Ruggs type, where you're like, that guy shouldn't be the first wide receiver selected. Jamar Chase should have been the first wide receiver selected. He's an awesome wide receiver prospect, the type of wide receiver prospect we haven't had in years. Then you get Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith. They're not perfect prospects, but they're not egregiously bad, shouldn't have gone in the 1st round type of prospects. They're good to great prospects, depending on where you stand. Rondale Moore's a really strong prospect. Rashad Bateman's a really strong prospect. Elijah Moore.
It's top
Brown.
It's top heavy. Those are all good players.
Terrace Marshall. Like, there's a lot of guys in this class. I think it's a little bit of a maligned class.
But the draft that I was just referencing, you're in that league. You ended up taking Kadarius Toney 209. I don't think you would have taken Kadarius Toney 209 if obviously, first of all, every guy you just named wasn't off the board. They were, but also in most other classes because there are some interesting guys.
But last year's class in the 209, I might have taken Chase Claypool. But Chase Claypool to me is very similar. I mean, obviously Chase Claypool hit. Normally the Chase Claypool profile does not hit. But that's a similar bet to Kadarius Toney. If Kadarius Toney has a first-round draft, Kadarius Toney, if we could rewind, and I didn't know anything about Chase Claypool, I would have told you that Kadarius Toney is a better bet than Chase Claypool because he's basically the same profile, but Chase Claypool comes with second-round draft capital, Kadarius Toney first-round draft capital. So,
you mean just same production profile, not like they're not similar size, are they?
No. They're not similar size. Kadarius Toney's going to play out of the slot. I'm just saying that, like, if you just erase my memory and put Chase Claypool in this class, I'd take Kadarius Toney over him. Just based on the prospect profile.
Yeah.
Because he's a first round pick. Like that's a lot.
Okay, but then really beyond Toney, when you start to get, I guess Amon-Ra St. Brown's okay. You start to get into like Amari Rodgers. Eskridge,
I'm not into Amari
interesting.
Anthony Eskridge,
Schwartz,
I've become a weird like Eskridge supporter, and I think he's a terrible pick by the Seahawks, but he's a second round pick and they have a need.
Yeah, and he's playing with Russell Wilson now, which is always helpful. But like Anthony Schwartz, Nico Collins, Josh Palmer, who I stared at for a long time when I was on the clock where I took Gainwell.
I just took him. Yeah,
but I was like, man, he's not good. Like it's a great situation, but like, do I really feel confident he's going to even beat out Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson? Like, there's not a lot in his profile.
Yeah, but it's like, there's really nothing in Terry McLaurin's profile to indicate that he would have been good, except for the third round pick. There's really nothing in DJ Shark's profile that indicates he should be any good at all, except for that he was a third round pick. Or he was a second round pick. These guys with nothing going for them but draft capital do hit. They're not good bets, but we have a lot of them this year. And like, to me, that's like kind of what late second round, third round picks are for. Like, I'd rather be taking those guys than.
So you don't think that's a worse like group of whatever third round receivers in rookie drafts than typical? And I will say this is a top heavy class. I mean, you just named it. There are several good wide receivers into the second round of rookie drafts, but especially in non-superflex, a lot of those guys I just named, they go in the second. You know, that seems.
Yeah, I think
we don't have the running back depth is what it is. It's that there's no running backs to push the guys that we'd rather take down. The wide receiver class is actually pretty good. The running back class sucks.
Well, you know why? Like last year we had the Keyshawn Vaughn who got steamed hard and started pushing people down. We wanted that to be like Michael Carter or Trey Sermon this year, and it just didn't happen. Like they didn't jump up high enough to push down more.
You got to play in some of these public leagues because Michael Carter did happen. It's awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael Carter's a first round pick in a lot of these one quarterback public leagues.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the best.
All right. So you're saying Michael Carter is our generation's Keyshawn Vaughn?
Yes, I am.
I also need to get a joke off. You did miss one metric on Terry McLaurin's profile that would have indicated he was good. The ding dong narrative with Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, because that really helped him out.
The other thing too, I think obviously we got spoiled from last year's class, but I don't know. It felt like there were more direct paths for those late first, mid second receivers, the Chenaults, the Ayuks to get immediate opportunity. Like I'm even having a hard time getting excited about Waddle. You know, like how much opportunity is he going to get right out of the gate to be relevant? And I know talent, rise to the crop. He'll earn it if he's good, but on paper, it's just not as sexy as it was last year.
Well, that's the other thing. Last year's class was historically good.
Yeah.
Last year's class, I don't know if I'm missing anyone in my spreadsheet from like some of these older classes, but last year's class, according to the numbers I'm looking at, scored the most points as a rookie, like top to bottom, drafted rounds 1 through 7, the most rookie fantasy points of any class that I have going back to 2007. They outscored the 2014 class, which was second. Like last year's class has looked awesome, has been great so far. I think it's going to continue to be great. So coming off of that class, I think we were bound to be disappointed by the following class. I think the running back class actually took a huge step down. The wide receiver class isn't that much worse. It's worse, but not that much worse.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the chat. We got Cobra Kai back. We have Henry Muto back. These were some of our in-season draft season regulars. I think they saw we had Top Shot brain for a few months and just sat those out. And now we're back. It feels like we're getting back in the ship chasing draft season mojo with those guys back in the chat.
It does. It does. And it's nice. Yeah, we're not talking Top Shot. We're deep in the rookie streets. It's nice.
One thing we do want to talk tonight about kind of forecasting where we think some of these rookies are going to start to go in redraft this year, but there's a lot of chatter in the chat right now about how the new schedule is going to impact FFPC playoffs with week 13 and week 14 buys. That's going to coincide with the league playoffs for FFPC playoff leagues. I haven't looked at the specific teams yet, but Henry is not happy about having
I'm
to
not
deal
either.
with Christian McCaffrey. You don't get him in your league playoffs at least one of the weeks.
The NFL schedule, once again, the bye weeks are just absolutely atrocious. So they start week 6, they go to week 14. Obviously, we have 17 weeks this year. Weeks 6 and 7, the first 2, and weeks 13 and 14, the last 2, that's 4 weeks total, have 18 of the teams. And then the 5 weeks in between, where usually you have, the normal bye weeks, there's an extra week in there. It's 5 weeks. They only have 14 of the teams that are on bye during that stretch. There's a bunch of 2 bye weeks in that stretch in the middle, but it starts off with 4 buys in week 6 and 6 buys right after that in week 7. Week 7, the 6th bye is a bunch of good teams: Buffalo, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Minnesota. There's like several fantasy relevant players.
That's apple picking week.
And then in the back end, 13 and 14, like last year we had the 2 teams in week 13, and I believe we had none in week 12, right? And that's going to be the equivalent of 13, 14 this year. But this year we have 4 and 4. We have 8 teams on bye during, the FFPC playoffs and several other larger formats like Scott Fishbowl and stuff that are going to be influenced by that. It's brutal. Like this whole middle stretch, they didn't put anyone on bye. There's a bunch of 2 bye weeks. It's just horribly set up.
Sam's got an interesting take here, Sam Sherman, because I believe this is Sean's take, that people get too worked up about the fact that they need to avoid these week 13, 14 buys, because those guys will be not available during your league playoffs in the FFPC. They are, of course, available in the championship playoffs, but if you win the league in the regular season, you get an auto berth to the championship playoffs in the first place. And making the playoffs is the most important thing in the first place.
I would say I do think you could counter. I do mostly agree with that. I think when you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey who is scoring, 10 points above replacement, like that is such a meaningful difference of like, I'm not going to worry about my other bye week guys, like the guys you're filling in on your bench. If you're getting to that spot, you have good depth. But a guy like McCaffrey or say Kelsey, who is giving you that much more than that does hurt.
Yeah.
I think if you have if you're taking McCaffrey, the move is where possible, stack week 13 and 14 buys. Cause like you're kind of playing for the regular season auto bid anyway.
Yeah. I like that.
That's sort of like I had that in not in high stakes in Scott Fishbowl last year, but I had McCaffrey and I stacked a bunch of Panthers and Bucks, and it actually worked out. I had like Evans and Rojo and McCaffrey and DJ Moore and stuff. I think it's a smart way to play that. If you have a really important player on a bye, you're probably going to be screwed in the playoffs anyway. Shoot more for that 1 to 12 range and take the 13, 14 buys.
Hey, Henry, I probably agree with this, but there's not too many people who listen to this show that played 113 leagues. But yes, I imagine it's tough, and there are implications there too of where you're getting your ROI, getting that cash by winning your league prize.
Henry, where do you sit on this? Do you try to avoid those guys or not? The guys one of the teams I wanted to talk about was Miami. And they're one of those teams with a week 14 bye. Because I do think, you're mentioning Waddle, and I struggle with Waddle's volume as well. But I really like their offseason. Like I like the
Uh-oh, Pat.
Oh, that was me.
They're
Pat, while Pat figures this out, I'm going to actually pull up
probably more than any other team in this
Still rolling.
offseason are just building around their quarterback.
Pat, your
We've seen
internet's
this,
awful right now.
multiple years pay huge dividends.
Yeah, strong point.
Cut out.
Pat, your internet is atrocious. You can't hear us right now. Eric, I hope you're on that. While Pat figures this out, I did want to pull up the bye weeks. He was talking about Miami. I mean, this is so gross too. Like you were saying, like, how do you not get this more balanced out with week 8, 11, and 12?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, what I was emphasizing was 6, 7, 13, 14 are all heavy weeks. And then you have all these weeks in the middle that are light. And it just doesn't make any sense. Especially the other thing that bugs me, and I've always wanted them to do this, is why not find a way to do 4 teams a week? Just make it consistent. Go 8 weeks. You wouldn't have to have a week 14, 6 to 13, 4 teams a week. Make that a stipulation as you build out the schedule. And you can make that work. It's not that they can't make it work. It's not that hard.
I will say, looking at this, like week 13 is like brutal. Week 14, not as many studs that you're going to be missing out on week 14. Jonathan Taylor is like the stud.
Yeah. New England being there. Philly, we were just talking about, might be kind of gross with Hurts and the receiver rotation. So that is helpful.
Yeah. Week 12 looks like a nice one to have, right? Because you get your Arizona and KC guys, you get to the playoffs, or you earn your record to get to the league playoffs, then they sit, and then you have them the rest of the stretch. That seems like a nice pocket there for those guys. Pat, are you back?
2 of the best QBs. Those are interesting teams.
I think I'm back, but I'm delayed.
Well, your new green screen setup threw off your internet?
I don't know what's going on. Like, it just kind of froze. I pulled up the schedule and it just froze on me. So I'm glad you have.
You kept coming in for bits, and you were still going on your point, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah, I had stopped. I realized I was frozen, and then I was hearing that you guys were reacting to stuff I had said 30 seconds earlier.
So what were you saying about Miami in particular?
Well, I just like that they worked around what their quarterback does. I mean, we've seen this for multiple off seasons with Lamar, and now with Josh Allen, where they just they're like, what can we do to make our quarterback more successful? And they identify the type of weapons that he needs in Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle, and they bring him in, and they don't burn a stupid luxury pick on a running back like they do. They had a really good, smart offseason, and I'm excited about the ability of that offense to take a leap forward. It's a little tough because for high stakes, you want to go with the rushing quarterback. You don't necessarily want to invest in Tua. But I am interested in Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle for our high stakes teams because I do think that Tua could take a pretty big step forward as a passer.
Yeah. I like that take. I'm on board with the Tua rebound. I think he's going way too low in underdog drafts right now. He's practically free. People are so down on Tua, and they've done everything they could this offseason to cater to his skill set.
Yep. And we've seen that work in a huge way the last couple off seasons. So I'm excited for what this offense could look like.
Let's talk about some of these rookie ADPs right now. Obviously, we have underdog ADP data coming in. We'll soon be having FFPC data. I mean, the Kyle Pitts hype alone. I mean, I saw a screenshot today of him going 312 in a non-tight end premium draft. So let's start the conversation there. I think the conversation's very interesting for FFPC, where it is tight end premium. You get that playoff surge. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you guys think 312 is way too early for Kyle Pitts.
Pat does. I do, so Pat does.
Yeah, that's the right way to put it. So, Ben, you explain why you think it's too high, because I've already talked about Kyle Pitts, and I'm sick of being the Kyle Pitts bear.
I don't want to reach for him in non-tight end premium. I think in non-tight end premium, if you're going tight end early, the guy has to be elite, and that is still too early. I mean, that I consider that early 312. Like that's not. There's some good receivers at that point. It's got to be Kittle or Waller or Kelsey, obviously, and that's. It's a mistake that I made in leagues, a couple years back and multiple years. The OJ Howard year comes to mind where Hunter Henry also got hurt and Evan Ingram were like the 4 to 6 tight ends. And you could make a good case for all of them, but it's not a position that you want to chase into maybe chase the uber elites in non-tight end premium. But even there, it's just an easy position to stream, but in tight end premium, we can start talking about some bull stuff for Pitts.
Pat, Mark Andrews or Kyle Pitts? That's a decision on Underdog right now.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And I would also take TJ Hawkinson first.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's definitely exploitable then, because you can definitely get TJ Hawkinson. He's in like a full tier break ADP wise after Kyle Pitts.
He shouldn't be.
We've had one elite tight end season from a rookie. It was Evan Ingram. The tight end position generally takes several years to develop. Kyle Pitts can be better than Gronkowski throughout his career and not have an incredible rookie season. Gronkowski didn't. Gronkowski scored some touchdowns in rookie season. He wasn't a dominant tight end out of the gate. I just think it's a little bit too bullish. And I think TJ Hawkinson's set up for potentially a ton of receptions. And if you want to talk about tight end premium, where's the premium? It's the receptions. So I don't know that, an explosive, probably very efficient player like Kyle Pitts is necessarily where you want to just go crazy on as a rookie compared to a guy. The whole offense, the whole passing offense could run through TJ Hawkinson.
Yes, could, but we haven't seen that from Hawkinson. So the bull case for Pitts, and this isn't just to your point, but it's to the point that's been everywhere, all over Twitter. I don't think I've seen a tweet reframed more than how hard it is for rookie tight ends to produce. That is true, but Kyle Pitts, it's not. You can just be like, oh, he's different, and then sound like an idiot. But he's different athletically than almost every tight end prospect ever. He's different production-wise. Pat, you've made the point that his production is more like a good, not great receiver. But all of the other high first-round tight ends recently that he gets comped to, Ebron, Hawkinson, who are the other ones that I'm not thinking of?
He'd be a really good wide receiver prospect. I don't want to understate that. He just wouldn't be a spotless wide receiver prospect.
And all those dudes did not have anywhere near. I wrote about this in a Substack before the draft. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but none of them had anywhere near a season like Pitts did in his true junior year. He's a true early declare breakout. That's what you're talking about. He would have a great wide receiver profile. He has the wide receiver breakout dominator rating that none of those other tight ends did. They were all low 20%. Pitts was 32% last year in college, which it was only 8 games. That's a point that Pat's made as well, and I think is very fair. But from a production standpoint, and then you also add in the draft capital, obviously no one's ever gone as high as him, period. You could just say he's one of one. But anyone who's even comparable to him in that regard doesn't have the production, and in many cases doesn't have the athleticism either. So he really is a one of one tight end. So the idea that we should lump him in with all the other tight ends, to me, is closer to a floor situation for him, where if that happens, I will be mildly disappointed that that's what he did in his first year. And then I think the median is he's a little bit better than that, more like a wide receiver because he profiles a little bit more like one. And the ceiling is maybe not in year one, but is literally that he's a multi-year overall tight end one. And the other really important thing is we're seeing rookies produce earlier and earlier at every position. I truly believe at wide receiver at every position that's a trend that's going to continue. We're seeing rookie quarterbacks start earlier every year. It's just something that teams are realizing. We don't need to give these guys as much time as we thought we used to. NFL offenses look more like college offenses now. There's a lot of reasons for it. And then the league has changed a ton since Vernon Davis, who's probably his best comparable from a draft capital, athleticism, production standpoint. But Vernon Davis came into the league to a San Francisco team that was running low 900s in plays. It was a completely different era. There's no team in 2021 that looks like the 49ers did back in 2006, 2007, and especially not the Falcons. Like, the Falcons are not going to look like that. They don't even have a running game. Like, they have Mike Davis and no one else. They're going to throw the ball a ton like they have been for several years, and Julio might be gone too. I mean, it is really, really hard for me to imagine a scenario where Kyle Pitts is not running a ton of routes, seeing a ton of targets. He's not a block first tight end. They drafted him forward to use him as a receiver. It's really hard for me to see a scenario where he's not more comparable to a wide receiver than most of the tight ends in that bucket when we talk about how it is hard for tight ends to produce. He's not a two-way tight end. TJ Hawkinson is. None of these other guys really are. I mean, he might develop that, but it's something that I feel like his range is that everything we keep hearing as a default is the other tight ends. That's closer to his floor outcome, and then we go up from that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he's going ahead of Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews has had 2 really strong receiving seasons under his belt already. Like, it's frothy. It's a frothy ADP for a rookie tight end. I don't even think, like, you can be right and he'd still not hit his ADP.
That's a good point.
I think Sam makes a good point here too about Kelsey, Kittle, Waller. The passing offense revolves around them. They're the wide receiver one on those teams. Odds Pitts is that this year with Ridley and even Julio are 0%.
Yeah.
That's a good point, but it's not the only point. I mean, I look, I love Sam. I hate the concept of we have to name a wide receiver one on a team. That's not the way it should work in 2021. I've bashed on that for years. It's not. There are so many teams with 2 top 12 receivers that can excel. I think Atlanta's going to be a kind of offense in a dome with no running game that can certainly support 2 high-end receiving weapons. I don't need to comp him to Calvin Ridley. I need to comp, like, what's his scenario?
But I do think, like, generally tight ends, the situations in which a tight end is just dominant, there's not a high volume wide receiver, and certainly not 2 also on the team. Like, the fact that the Ridley and Julio were there is not great for Pitts to be a dominant.
I mean, Kelsey's the best of that group, and he has Tyreek Hill.
But Tyreek Hill's gets there on efficiency. I mean, he's not like a DeAndre Hopkins type of profile as a receiver.
So does Ridley, right? I think.
No, I'm saying, like, because Ridley and Julio are there. If Julio gets traded, then I think I'd be more bullish. But just the volume for again a rookie tight end. I'm not, like, bearish on his situation long term, but I'm just saying he's going ahead of Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson, guys who you could see the offense running through to a certain extent, or at least them kind of getting theirs with no problem. Whereas Pitts is probably getting there more on touchdowns and more on making awesome plays, which he's going to do. But especially in tight end premium, I think it's getting a little out of hand because it's just harder for me to see the receptions coming in bunches the way you do see upside with that for some of the other guys.
I think that's a really good point. And I am a little bit concerned about his year 1 reception potential. Like, I'll readily admit that. I will say another reason I'm so optimistic is we've known for years that, like, whatever it is with Julio, he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. Ridley has had really high touchdown rates since he came in. Pitt's totally and they've had troubles in the red zone passing the last couple of years. Pitt's totally profiles as, like, red zone guy. Like, I will be surprised if he doesn't score 6 touchdowns in year 1. Legitimately surprised. I think that's close to his floor, and I think his ceiling is close to 10 touchdowns. That's the range I would project and say that I'm comfortable. Kyle Pitts is going to score between 6 and 10 touchdowns this year. He's the guy that they would use down there. Right?
Ridley, I mean, it's not an accident that he's been awesome in the red zone. He's been they'll use him. I don't think they're just going to stop using him. But you're right. I mean, well, wouldn't it be kind of hilarious if teams finally, focus their attention on someone else other than Julio, and Julio scored a ton of touchdowns this year?
That would be absolutely great. Yeah,
that's actually, you know what? As the Pitts Bear, I got to load up on Julio, man. I got to load up on Julio this year. It's finally coming. The TDs are coming.
So I pulled up this Fantasy Mojo had a draft board here from Fantasy or Football Guys Players Championship. You can see here Pitts going here in round 3, round and a half ahead of Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, does the tight end premium change things for you? Also the potential of a late breakout end of season, playoff hammer, because that's certainly in play. As Ben was saying, these guys are getting on the field earlier, and we've seen these super talented guys be monsters in the fantasy playoffs in year one.
What was the question? Ricky's trolling me in the chat here, so I was reading his comment. He's saying
he's still trolling you about Bateman.
Yeah, he's saying Andrews and Bateman are going to play 48% of the snaps. Which, okay, I'd love to see your projections, Ricky. Are you a big Nick Boyle guy? What's going on?
That's a pretty good troll. That's because they do that weird stuff like occasionally where the number like Andrews will play 48% like for one game. I look at this and I want Hawkinson at that price before I want Pitts at that price. Yeah, I mean I'll say that. As optimistic as I am.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean you're having to pass up on DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Godwin, Evans, Julio. I mean that's tough. I mean all those guys. I mean Justin Jefferson. I was reading the board the wrong way. I mean you're passing up on a ton of wide receivers.
That's a lot of opportunity cost.
Yeah, man. I don't even want Hawkinson at that price. Moore's going behind both those tight ends too. Like I don't want those three. I want to take one of the elite three, or I want to wait.
Kittle actually looks like a value here compared to where Pitts is going. Like God.
Like I'm very high on Pitts and cost adjusted. I'm out on that. That's not a way for me.
The other rookie up there, I mean Najee Harris, back into round one. I mean over Aaron Jones, over Eckler, over Mixon. I'm not there. Are you guys?
If you want him, get him now, because he's probably be the 106 by the time we draft.
You think he's going to be the pump?
Yeah, if you want him, get him now, man. I don't think the Najee hype's slowing down.
Wait, am I crazy? Like, why would you want Harris over Eckler?
I don't. I don't want him over Gibson. I don't want him over. Well, Aaron Jones is tough because if it's Jordan Love, that's disgusting. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Mixon.
Me too.
I'd much rather have Mixon than Najee Harris. I mean, talk about like targeting explosive offenses. Steelers.
Well, and I mean, at that point, there's one receiver off the board too, and one tight end. Like, I would just rather not take a running back if you're going to take Najee Harris there. Like, go ahead, running back truthers, have it. But I would much rather take Diggs or Devontae Adams or Darren Waller or George Kittle there. Like,
Yeah, me too.
Those are me too. Really good players. Or AJ Brown.
And then where's our next guy coming off the board here as far as rookies? So Etienne there goes in the mid fourth, where Jonathan Taylor ended up going where last year? Early third?
He was in the
early third.
Early third, yeah.
Late. Yeah, it was late. It was early fourth, and then it was late third. Well, it was late third, then it was early fourth, then it was late third, and then it was early third.
It was early third to close, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So Etienne, are you buying or selling at that price?
I think you want some exposure. I do think you want a little bit of exposure because they immediately just kicked James Robinson to the curb. And, they can talk about third down back, whatever. But, like, Etienne's going to play, and Etienne's explosive, and this offense could take a big step forward. So it's similar to DeAndre Swift. I'd say approach him the exact same way as you approached DeAndre Swift last year.
And I'm just going to be kind of lame, though, and say, like, again, the receivers after that point are just, like, I agree with Pat. You probably want some exposure, but, man, I would have such a hard time taking him over DJ Moore. I really would. I think DJ Moore is very comparable to Stephon Diggs last year.
Yeah,
coming off a pigeonholed situation. It's not a new team. It's not a whole new situation. It is a new quarterback. Moore's situation was as bad as it gets because he was running all these deep routes and he was playing with Teddy Bridgewater. Even just the quarterback change makes things better for him. And he was still productive, for the record. This guy's been productive in every way you can imagine since he came in. Early career rookie, low ADOT, and with the rushing that he had about 200 rushing yards as a rookie. Immediate 960 yards from scrimmage, I think it was his rookie year. And then monster sophomore year, got hurt in week 16, only played like 6 snaps in 14 games, has a huge year. And then last year still puts up like 1,100, 1,200 yards as this deep threat to like the worst quarterback for deep balls that like in the league. Yeah. He can do everything. The way that Diggs showed he could do everything, but was never getting that opportunity. Although Moore kind of did get that opportunity in year 2 and was great.
Because he's awesome after the catch. He's one of the best yak receivers in the league.
And then Marshall played a little bit of slot, right? But he's big.
He's big. He's a big outside guy.
I mean, he's an outside guy, right?
Yeah, he's an outside guy.
He played some slot. I mean, I just was thinking if they brought him in, like maybe that means more kicks into the slot a little bit more. Like
I think he will a little bit, or Robbie Anderson does, and is undervalued. But one of those guys is probably going to have a really, really nice redraft season. And I think, Moore is the one with the big, really nice upside. Because, Jerry Jeudy's another guy that people seem like overly down on and also fits the same thing you're talking about, where I wasn't sure Jerry Jeudy could operate as a deep threat at the NFL level. He did last year, and he was actually pretty good at it. And we already know he can win shallow. Like, he's got these great technical route running skills. So I'm bullish on Jerry Jeudy because I got another piece of that profile to him being like a complete wide receiver. But yeah, DJ Moore, God, if the quarterback plays better, I'm not a big Sam Darnold guy, so I've been having trouble getting excited. But I guess what I would say is with Etienne, do some hyper fragile builds in best ball, get your exposure there, and then don't pass on DJ Moore in high stakes leagues. Draft DJ Moore in the 4th round.
Yeah. I will say the difference with Diggs, like I think about this, and I'm going to write about this at some point, but this concept of like situation regression. And that was like, it's Diggs that got me on this kind of thought process, because I was trying to make this case all last offseason about Diggs, where it's like people were saying, well, Allen's less accurate than Cousins. It's another low volume pass team. It's not going to be good. And what I was trying to say with Diggs was he's going to get used as a wide receiver 1. They tried to trade for Antonio Brown. They gave up more draft capital than the Cardinals gave up for DeAndre Hopkins. They clearly saw him as an alpha wide receiver 1. We're going to turn him loose as 1. And so his situation was going to regress back towards maybe league median. What happened with Diggs, though, is it regressed beyond league median. He had like an 80th percentile situation. It's not really something we can quantify, but it was fantastic for him. I don't think DJ
maybe the best situation in the league. You know
what
I mean?
It might be 90th or higher.
Yeah.
And it was like literally like 10th. He didn't even get 100 targets with Thielen hurt the year before. Like, that's insane. Like, how could a team not get him 100 targets with their other good receiver hurt? Moore, I think, was like 10th percentile last year. I think all the things I just said suggest that. I don't think he can regress to like, or I don't think he can move past the 50th percentile to like the 80th or 90th percentile like Diggs did. So it's not going to be the same type of thing as Diggs necessarily. I just think regression is regression. Like, if you think about it in that concept, like, he's going to move towards more of an average role one way or another. Either they'll use him closer to the line of scrimmage and he has awesome demonstrated yak ability. That's where I think he's best. Or like the quarterback play will just be better for him or whatever. Like, it can get a little worse if McCaffrey just takes a ton of targets. Obviously he'll be back, but I don't think he can get much worse, and it can get a lot better. So it might not get as good as Diggs, but I think it's going to get better, and he's good.
So the next pair of rookies we have here is in the 5th. We have Jamar Chase and Javonte Williams going off the board back to back. Pat, I know Chase was someone in particular you wanted to talk about tonight. At first blush, seeing his redraft ADP, are you buying or selling it there?
I'm buying it. I think that just given how good Jamar Chase's profile is, and then he lands with the quarterback who delivered that season for him with a team that is going to be passing a ton. And Leone just sent some notes over on an article that he's writing on the Bengals that's just making me very excited about the entire offense. He said, okay, here's Leone's notes. They averaged 70.4 plays with Burrow. League average just under 64. They had an insane amount one week, but even if you remove that week, they didn't have a single week where they didn't run more plays than league average. Not a single week. The team total implies that they're going to have a high expected pass rate. And then even accounting for game script, they had a pass rate 4 percentage points higher than expected last season with Burrow. This team is going to throw a ton of
that last one is super interesting because they sucked, and so they threw a ton, but they even accounting for it, like you said. I mean, they're going to throw a ton.
And that jumps out to me here looking at Burrow in round 11. Looks so nice. I even like the Russell Wilson price there in round 10 a lot. I mean, because we were all wondering what's going to happen to this quarterback tier. You see Dak, Herbert pushed up around to where, I don't know, that seems fair. But to have that gap to Russ and Burrow there, I mean, man, grabbing one of Higgins or Chase and then knowing you can come back and get Burrow like that seems really nice.
Oh yeah.
Well,
That's interesting.
I'd be interested in getting Higgins and Chase if you can pull that off.
Yeah.
I'm pretty big on Higgins still, just because I think that, like Adam Thielen was the wide receiver 10 last year. Justin Jefferson has this incredible rookie season. Adam Thielen is still the wide receiver 10. Like, I don't think T. Higgins is dead if Jamar Chase is who we think he is. He could still have an awesome season, just given all the passing numbers that Leon.
And before Burrow got hurt, he was like neck and neck with Jefferson and Lamb. They were all sort of like every week someone was like, they had a new dynasty overall wide receiver 1 on Twitter, whoever had the big game. It was those 3. And then both Lamb and Higgins quarterbacks get hurt. Jefferson, granted, continued to explode and deserves credit for that. But now all of a sudden, Lamb and Higgins are not looked at quite as favorably as they should be. I think that's a mistake. Both those guys. Yeah. I think we should basically credit them for great rookie seasons because they did it out of the jump, both of them.
Yep. Yeah. Those guys. Yeah, exactly. And Chase is good for the offense. Chase is going to help the offense convert third downs. They're going to be driving down the field. There's going to be getting in the end zone more often. They're going to be scoring more points. Like, all that stuff is good. It's like target share, I think, can get a little bit. People spend a little bit too much time like slicing up the pie of the target share and not thinking about like what happens if Jamar Chase coming into this offense brings it up to an entirely different level of effectiveness on top of an offense that clearly wants to run a very pass heavy script. It could be awesome. It could be
it's a great example of what I was just getting upset about with trying to name a wide receiver 1 on a team. It is why last year CeeDee Lamb was going like 9th round and Gallup was going even later, who we were high on. And Gallup ended up not having a great year. But collectively, all 3 of those Dallas receivers couldn't get up high enough. Amari was like 4th or 5th round because no one wants to be like, I want to take the number 2 on his team or the number 3 on his team. We just said we feel really confident the Bengals are going to throw a ton. When you know that, that's a very favorable thing. And that's like, you don't have to decide who's going to get whatever amount of targets. The thing is, they're both probably going to be good and excel. And maybe their volume's capped a little. But then there's also this scenario where if one of them gets injured, the other one has league-winning upside. Like they're now you're in an explosive, high-volume offense, and you're the guy. And they're both good. And Boyd as well, I think, is very good. And still a guy I'm going to take. And I think he's going to end up keep slipping as people get a little more excited on Higgins. But those prices, Higgins in the 6th, Boyd in the 7th, I will take those all day, and Chase in the 5th. I'll take all 3 of those all day.
Yeah, me too. Nope. I like the Boyd call too.
Yeah. Bengals looking very nice. I assume they're going to get some steam here, especially Burrow. I feel like if Chase and Higgins stay trendy, Burrow naturally has to jump a round or 2.
I don't think, because right now you could go 5, 6, 7, and you go Mixon in 2, and you go Burrow. Like you could literally just go Bengals 1 slot. I don't think that the ADP is going to allow that even as a possibility within probably the second week of July. All those opportunities are gone. So
yeah,
I'd say sooner the better. As soon as these drafts start up, you gotta jump on that Bengals stuff.
We should figure out which guys we think are going to fall because, I think Galladay should fall. I don't think he should be going there. Even the late 5th.
I didn't see him.
Late 5th. I'm not that optimistic about that with Higgins in the 6th and Ayuk in the 6th. I don't think Galladay should be that high.
Yeah, I could see him falling a bit.
There's a lot of other dudes there that I don't know which ones I think are going to fall for these guys to ride.
I think OBJ might fall a little bit.
That's a good one.
He's not very exciting.
No one gets excited. But what about Javonte Williams, though? Do we think that price is fair, or is that pricey for him?
I'm torn on him, man. I think he's a pretty good prospect. And I do think that there are scenarios where they just give him the backfields to close the year.
Uh-oh.
And it could be a bit of a Cam Akers situation.
I did your Cam Akers situation? Yeah. Pat, you're breaking out again. Yeah, I mean, where are you on that? Gretch, is he a guy that you want to bet for the playoff hammer?
I don't mind the price. It's really interesting to see Gordon there in the 6th. That's unless Rodgers is there, and I think he might be. I mean, I made a bet with Leone on draft night that he's going to be out of Green Bay, and I'm thinking that Denver's the prime landing spot. But I mean, even if he is there, I don't know that I want I don't know if I want to see 2 Denver running backs in round 5 and 6, but the offense would be a lot better in that scenario. But especially as we stand, it's tough. Like Gordon's going too high, probably. Williams, I think maybe is a little bit too. Like Gordon's probably going to get the veteran deference for the good part of the first half of the year. He has a pretty good contract. It's not like a lot of rookies come in and you think they're going to take over, and usually they do. This isn't like Taylor and Marlon Mack last year, though. Like Marlon Mack was a former 4th-round pick running out his rookie deal. Melvin Gordon is a pretty big free agent signing from one offseason ago. They still have a lot of money invested in him. I like Williams, but it's a steep price, I think, in the 5th.
You back, Pat?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be freezing, but what I'll say about it is that Melvin Gordon was signed by a previous regime, and to me, I think Javonte Williams is interesting for the kind of like 0 running back type of builds that we're going to want to do. Because if you think about him kind of like Miles Sanders from 2 years ago, where, yeah, maybe he's not crushing for us in the early weeks, but we have this running back in our back pocket that's going to come in and become, someone that's going to help us get to the playoffs and then win the league. He kind of profiles as that guy. Yeah.
We got that in the chat. Big Jordan Howard energy.
Seriously. I mean, looking at, the round 7, both the Devonta Smith and Trey Sermon, that seems rich for both of those guys in round 7.
And there's going to be a little bit of extra rookie hype right after the draft. Some of these are going to cool off. They're just naturally going to. I think after I said all that about Williams and then heard Pat's point, I think I'm fine with him in 5. But yeah, I think especially Sermon in 7, that's too much. That's too much.
I agree. I'm not into Sermon in 7.
Like Sermon feels like a guy that you're hoping to get as a 0 RB build, like round 10, 11, 12. Like that's where I want Sermon.
Or the Zach Moss type of pick in 8, 9. Like even if he's a round or 2 later, I'd be more okay with the 7s generally.
Zach Moss was climbing up into that range last year.
Yeah, but we were getting him early. Like this time last year, we were looking at him like round 10, 11, but we figured he'd move up. But for Sermon to be starting in 7, there's good wide receivers in 7. There's good wide receivers in 8. Jerry Jeudy round 8, like Laviska Shenault round 8. That's pretty nice.
And people are afraid of running backs right now. Look at what's going. Like Sermon went behind AJ Dillon, and I like AJ Dillon, but like there's some concern with taking him in the 7th. I think you have Gainwell going in the 8th. Gainwell is that's too rich. I was talking him up early, but that's a big one. That's too rich. Like he's not in a situation where he should be going in the 8th round.
He's like a 13th round guy. I don't know what's going on there.
We're going to get more clarity, I think, on running back targets in rounds like 10, 11, 12. And then I think some of these sort of reaches in round 7 and 8 on some of these guys might get worse. But we are also just getting further and further down the path where there's less interesting running backs and way more interesting receivers because the NFL is just getting more and more spread.
Let me just run something gross by you guys. James Conner in the 8th round, I kind of like it.
Don't hate it. I was thinking the same thing. I was looking at that team and I was talking about Moore and you were talking about Chase. That's a good team, kind of up and down. Justin Herbert.
Because you're a lot of those running back ADPs in that round 6 to 9 like really gross me out. And I'm with you. I like that James Conner. I like the Tony Pollard. I like similar to the James Conner. I like Raheem Mostert in 8.
Me too.
Trey Sermon going ahead of Mostert is ridiculous.
It is.
God, did we just become boomers?
No, because this is round 8. We can talk about running backs as long as it's round 8.
Yeah, Connor, like everyone's just saying that Chase Edmonds is the guy, and they've never really had him be the guy. Although, where did he go? It doesn't look like he went too high. Oh yeah, he went in round 6. Connor's deal's very, very low salary. I think it's like 1.7 mil, and it's, I think that's what Malcolm Brown signed for with Miami. It's very low for a vet. But still, like they're going to use him in the Kenyon Drake role. I feel pretty confident about that.
I think they are, yeah. And that's nice. Chris Quigley here in the chat. Same role as Kenyon Drake, just 7 rounds cheaper. Yes, please. That's great. Kenyon Drake wasn't a bust because he did nothing. He was a bust because he's going almost near the 1-2 turn.
And Connor's younger than Drake was last year. Like Drake's like 29. People think he's like 25. And Connor's what, like 25, 26? People think he's 29. I mean,
yeah.
That was like, I heard Silva today say Zeke is only 25, or Levitan say that. That blew my mind. I thought he was like 28.
Well, that's because you've watched him play recently.
Same could be said about James Conner, to be fair.
Yeah, fair enough. Eric is asking me about Rojo late 7th.
But I'd take Zeke in the 8th as well. I mean, I'd be happy.
It's a little pricey. It's a little pricey. For the first time ever, I think Rojo might be a little overdrafted. That's
you can't take Rojo over Mostert.
You can't take Rojo over Mostert. You can't.
Any of these other rookies, Pat? I mean, here we got Bateman down here, right next to Rager, the two loves of your life, round 12.
Ronald Jones, Fournette, and Gio on that same team. What are you doing? It's going to be a split backfield. Why are you? What's 12 doing? They took Harris at 12, and they went and got Rojo, Fournette, and Gio as their 3, 4, 5.
That's awful. That's all. I didn't realize they had triple stacked the Tampa Bay backfield.
That's incredible.
They double handcuffed Rojo. Dude, if you're going to take Rojo, just take him. Don't double handcuff him.
Got a raw dog Rojo, as Pat always says.
Raw dog Rojo. That's what I always say. Oh, my God. All right, so Bateman and Rager. I like Bateman more there, and it's the same argument as the Javonte Williams argument, which is that Bateman's probably not going to do a ton for you, but then down the stretch, you're hoping he consolidates market share, and you've got a startable wide receiver with some upside. Rager, I just have a hard time seeing him consolidate market share in the same way. Bateman, I mean, it's all laid out for us. Like, they draft Marquise Brown in the first round, doesn't go great. They go back to the first round, get the guy. Marquise Brown had like a 25% market share, didn't do anything with it. Miles Boykin's nothing. They're signing Des Bryant off the street. They're clearly desperate for an alpha wide receiver. You can see like week 10, week 11, Bateman has this awesome role. Kind of like, last year we were excited that we have Claypool, Mims, Pittman, all these guys starting to emerge kind of as the season goes on. I think Bateman's could be in that exact same situation where he has enough market share to be one of these guys you're just so thankful that you have. Not necessarily like a true league winner type, but at that price, he can be like a slightly better version of Michael Pittman last year, and you're pretty stoked.
I think that's a measured take from the Bateman super fan there.
I'm fine with him in round 12. And I don't like Baltimore's volume, but like the case for him is, or the case against him with the volume stuff is like Baltimore literally might have a ceiling of 475 pass attempts. And that means that Bateman might not be able to be a top 12 receiver, but he can be efficient and good. And I think he's good enough that he can, like Pat was saying, can essentially be the number one in year one. And in round 12, go for it.
Yeah. I also like Rondale more in round 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty sweet value.
Eric saying he likes Team 6 here. That Team 6 is like the classic FFPC sharp build. The two running backs, you hammer wide receivers, you get the Justin Herbert stack with your Chargers, double tap a couple tight ends there, scoop the James Conner value. I mean, that's a classic sharp draft right there.
That's a classic sharp drafter, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Tevin Coleman at the end. Like, there's some pretty sharp picks in this.
Guys,
Henry Ruggs in the 14th. Henry Ruggs, I mean, come on. He's not dead.
I'm looking at this draft, and in every single round, it worse than usual. And usual is already a lot. I just want to take the receivers a lot more than all the running backs. This is going to be a problem this year.
It's the same problem every year.
It is every year, but oh my God.
Yeah. Speaking of builds, like this Team 9 is so interesting. Like they have the patience to go 0 RB until round 6, but they blow their load on Mahomes in the 3rd.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that looks like a draft that we would have.
And that early in the offseason with the best ball stuff, I was wondering, and Leone and I talked about this, like, is it going to make sense to maybe even reach for Mahomes in the 3rd? Because you're going to have to pay a really high price for one of these guys, but to see Russell Wilson in the 10th round,
that's
like, no, you shouldn't take Mahomes in the 3rd round. Like
Fields in the 11th and Lance in the 15th. Nice. So the redraft world is still way higher on Fields right now than Lance.
Looking at Team 1, who gets Metcalf, and they also went after Everett. But how many times did they pass on a Russ stack with Metcalf there? I mean, that looks so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. They should have done that.
What do you think about Hurts here in the 12th? I mean, I know I just talked about how he could end up being Drew Lock, but it could be pretty glorious for 1 year.
Yeah, I like that. I like taking that stab, especially in a managed league. I mean, why not? If he gets benched or something, I don't know, but he's probably going to play. I don't actually think Joe Flacco's coming for his job. Like, it's Joe Flacco.
No. Yeah, definitely not. I'm worried about they draft someone next year if they're bad.
Oh,
but
sure.
I don't think he's losing his job. Yeah. What's interesting, we've never done this, but I wouldn't be opposed. If this is the ADP, you could go Fields 11, Hurts 12, or Hurts 12, Lance 14. That's pretty nice. You just take 2 stabs at one of these rushing guys and be like, one of them probably going to be awesome. You might end up cutting the other one depending on how it goes.
And we just said Burrow and Wilson too. I mean, there's a lot of options there. Aaron Rodgers, Denver Bronco. Yeah, no, QB's
Rodgers is a Bronco. It's going to be so awesome.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see any other interesting late round picks here. Elijah Moore in round 13. I mean, I assume we've been talking all season about kind of Rondale, Elijah Moore, Bateman, all in a similar tier. So it makes sense that those guys would be going together.
But they're all good there. I mean, those are all really nice picks there.
Yeah, I like it. Where did Waddle go?
Good question. Where is Waddle on here?
Oh, round 9. That seems pretty good, actually.
Him and Fuller very close to each other.
I don't like that. I'm a little bit concerned about Waddle Tua's got to take a step forward. 1. They still have Parker and Fuller. Fuller's suspended for, week 1, but they still have him. And I mean, Preston Williams is going to be behind Waddle, I'm sure, but there could be some type of rotation. And we already have some concerns with him as a deep threat, being a high volume target guy. I should say I don't like it, especially compared to the fact that we're getting more and Bateman and more in 12 and 13. I don't want to take Waddle in 9 in that scenario.
Yeah, I'm open to it, but especially because Fuller's right there. I'd just rather have Fuller.
Yeah. I think Fuller's a much safer bet there.
God,
and similar upside.
Antonio Brown, 10th round. Got to lock him up.
Dude, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I see him going there in underdog drafts too, and I'm like, you couldn't pay me to take Antonio Brown in a draft.
No. I was hoping to get some Devonta Smith exposure in these high stakes because I'm not going to have any dynasty, but in the 7th round there, when you're getting, Waddle in the 9th is way better than Smith in the 7th.
Round 9, yes. You guys will need your RB2.
We can pass up Waddle and Will Fuller for our RB2 at that point.
Our RB2 is coming in the 13th, I think, given this receiver ADP.
Yeah, Waddle definitely breaking big plays. That's what we're looking for. That Odell Beckham taking the slants to the house kind of stuff.
Yeah, he is incredible. He's going to do some of that.
Yeah. Well, man, looking at this draft board, definitely getting excited to start drafting here. Even some season-long teams.
Yeah, that got my juices going.
They're going.
I got to figure out where I'm going to take running backs. That's the next step. At what point in the draft am I ever?
Davian Hawkins, baby.
I'm looking at these early boards. I think I would definitely. I could see myself I'll start a Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon start, and then just let it rip wide receivers after that.
Yeah, it's because the wide receiver ADP almost doesn't even start until round 2. There's what's the opportunity cost? You know what I mean? Of skipping because you're reaching. You can probably get the wide receiver you take in the 1st round with your 2nd round pick.
Yeah, it was Hill and Diggs, and there wasn't a ton else.
Well, I guess it's getting 2 of those guys.
Yeah,
it's getting 2 of those guys. Yeah.
But
the FFPC, the thing with the FFPC that's always tough is that that one team that you pointed out, Pete, that was the sharp drafter.
Yeah,
they do the 2 running backs start, and then they come back and they get some other stuff, and then they get James Conner, and then they come back and they get some other stuff, and then they get another running back, and then they do some other stuff, and they get Tevin Coleman. Those teams are always getting more running backs because they always want to be really, really strong at running back. And so if you think like, oh, I'll just come back later and get James Conner, he's probably going to go around earlier than you feel comfortable getting him.
Yeah.
So you have to like think, am I going to force myself to take James Conner like 10 picks or 15 picks ahead of where I want, or do I take Joe Mixon 3 picks ahead of where I want?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it too. And think about the receivers. Am I going to force myself to take James Conner 10 picks ahead of where I want in front of, Tyler Boyd or somebody that you actually want to be drafting, or Joe Mixon? There's obviously great receivers at that point too, but it's a little bit more comparable. It's something I can stomach a little bit more earlier in the draft.
And the other big difference, just looking at that early ADP, is last year we didn't have a ton of running backs after the top 5 that had the kind of pass catching 3-down upside. Whereas when you see the Mixon, the Eckler, all of those guys, like there's a good amount of options in the second round that fit that profile that we're looking for when we draft a running back top 5. Pat, I think, froze again.
That's frozen again. That's a good point.
We will continue to break this down. Going to have a very fun summer ahead. Any final words here, Gretch?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to thank Pat for coming on. Want to appreciate the good discussion with Pat, who could definitely hear me. And it was a good
I can hear you, Ben.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the thank you.
Pat, error rain. That's a tough one. Pat, are you back?
Maybe.
All right. He's taking a swig out of his mason jar, trying to remind us that he does live in Brooklyn. So for Kat Corain, for Ben Gretch, I'm Peter Overzet. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys next week.